"It's the same color," Walter whispered, his voice breaking as his flashlight trembled in his wrinkled hand. The metallic blue paint chip gleamed under the beam like a ghost from the past. 20 years of silence shattered in 1 second of recognition. He pressed a small fragment between his fingers, feeling its sharp edge cut lightly into his skin, real, undeniable. Behind him, the empty street hummed with the faint hum of broken cables. The pole leaned slightly, rusted, forgotten, just like the truth it had guarded all these years. He looked around the old intersection, the same one where his wife, Nora, had died under the glow of this very streetlight. It had gone dark that night. The police said a power fault caused the crash. He believed them once. But now, holding the chipped paint from a car long buried in memory, he realized it wasn't the light that failed. It was the people who turned it off. He pocketed the fragment and stood slowly, knees stiff but purpose steady. The town was quiet, almost staged, one of those places that smile by day and hid its rot under darkness. The new mayor had ordered the lights fixed before the town's centennial celebration, hiring the retired electrician, who'd once wired half these streets himself. To everyone, Walter Grady was just the old man who still talked to his wife's grave. To him, this job wasn't work. It was confession. He walked back to his van, its faded paint peeling like memory itself, and opened the glove box. Inside lay a folded photograph. Nora laughing beside their half-built porch, her hands smudged with paint, her hair catching sunlight. "You always said I was afraid of darkness," he muttered, voice trembling. "Let's see how they like the light." He placed the photo on the dashboard and drove to the next street. His headlights cut through the fog like a scalpel, slicing through years of lies. Every pole he stopped at carried something. A story, a scar. Near Elm Street, he found another chip of blue near the base, embedded deep in the rusted bolt. Same shade, same metallic tone. He scraped it carefully with his screwdriver, bagged it, and marked it with tape. The pattern was forming, like stars aligning on a map of guilt. He could almost hear Nora's voice in the wind, gentle, teasing, full of life. You always find patterns where no one looks. But this time, the pattern led to blood. By dawn, he'd inspected 5 lights, and under 3 of them, he found traces of the same blue paint. The path led directly to the factory road, where Mayor Rain's family used to run their trucking business. The same business that somehow funded every political campaign since the crash. Walter sat on the curb, exhausted but wired. His callous hands trembled as he took a deep breath, the morning sun turning the empty street golden. He whispered softly, "You were right, Nora. It wasn't an accident." His chest tightened with both grief and purpose. He opened the small metal box he always carried, once meant for fuses, now filled with evidence. Inside were photos of the paint chips, a copy of the crash report, and the newspaper clipping that had haunted him. Drunk driver escape scene. Police rule faulty streetlight responsible. Beneath the headline, a quote from the mayor's office promising infrastructure reform. He laughed bitterly. "You fix your image," he said. "Now I'll fix your lights." That evening, he returned to the intersection with his old repair kit and a new idea. He climbed the pole slowly, his body aching but determined. The metal was cold under his grip, familiar. He replaced the burnt bulb with a new one, then paused halfway down and began unscrewing the backplate. Inside, he installed something small, a modified camera module connected to a motion sensor. The lens faced the road, invisible in shadow. "If you killed her here," he said quietly, "you'll show up here again. The world might forget, but I built these streets. They listened to me." For the next 3 nights, Walter drove through the old parts of town, fixing lights that had been dark for decades. Every one of them he wired the same way, a secret witness watching over the places where truth once died. The cameras fed into his laptop at home, each screen glowing faintly like a heartbeat. His house was quiet except for the hum of electricity and the ticking of the old kitchen clock Nora once insisted he fix. He'd left it broken for years. Tonight, it ticked again. On the 4th night, something flickered across one of the screens, a dark SUV slowing near the same intersection. Walter leaned closer. The headlights cut briefly across the pole, illuminating the street sign, Nora Grady Memorial Corner. The SUV stopped for 3 seconds, then sped off. The reflection in the windshield was brief, but enough. A man's face, familiar, confident, younger than Walter, but old enough to know history. He rewound the footage, froze the frame. It was Mayor Raines. His hands clenched the desk edge until his knuckles turned white. The same man who'd given a condolence speech at her funeral, shaking his hand while promising justice. "You stood over a coffin," Walter whispered, voice low, trembling. "And you smiled." He printed the image, pinned it above his desk. The faint static from the live camera feeds filled the room like breathing. He turned to the old toolbox in the corner, the one marked private. Inside were rows of circuit boards, wires, and a small black control switch. He'd built it years ago, meant for a light show project he never finished. Now it had a new purpose. Each repaired pole was connected to the system. Every bulb, every circuit synchronized to his command. At the right time, with one flick, he could make every streetlight in town turn on at once and project what they'd all been hiding. He closed the lid, locking it tight. "You built this town on darkness," he murmured. "Let's see what happens when the lights come on." He looked once more at Nora's photo on the table, her smile catching the faint glow of the screens. The streetlight outside his window flickered twice, then steadied, as if answering him. He exhaled slowly. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "Tomorrow, you'll see what the light remembers. Don't dig into things you can't fix, old man." The voice came from behind him, half threat, half pity. Walter froze, his hand still inside the fuse box. He turned slowly, the beam from his flashlight catching Deputy Cole's badge. The man leaned against his truck, a smirk twisting his face. "Town's had enough ghosts," Cole said. "Let the dead rest." Walter's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He simply closed the fuse box, pulled the glove off his trembling hand, and looked at the deputy with eyes that no longer held age, only calculation. "Some of them don't rest easy," he said softly, then walked past him into the fog. Cole's gaze followed him, unease flickering behind false confidence. Walter knew then. They were watching him again, like they did 20 years ago when Nora died and the investigation stopped before it started. The same men who drank together after funerals and called it duty. That night, Walter sat in his small kitchen surrounded by blueprints. The old wiring schematics of the town lay spread out under the dim yellow light. He'd kept them from his electrician days, back when he believed electricity could fix what darkness broke. His callous fingers traced the paper lines like old veins, connecting poles, grids, intersections. Each point marked a memory, each wire a path between lives. He found what he needed, the old maintenance junction beneath the town hall, the same one feeding every streetlight in the historic district. It had been upgraded under Mayor Raines' revitalization project 5 years ago. But Walter knew something most didn't. He'd installed the original system himself. He knew where the ghosts lived in the wires. He pulled a battered journal from the shelf and flipped to a page filled with hand-drawn notes. He'd written these years ago after Nora's death. Try to map out what happened that night. The power outage had started exactly 2 minutes before the crash. The official report claimed a voltage surge, random, coincidental. But the transformer box on that line was new then, supplied by Raines' own construction company. Walter's breath slowed. It wasn't coincidence. It was orchestration. He set down his pen, staring at his trembling reflection in the window. "You shut off the light to kill her," he murmured. His words fogged the glass like confession smoke. The next morning, he went back to work. At least that's what the mayor thought. Raines greeted him outside the office with that politician's grin that never reached the eyes. "Walter, my man, you're a legend. Whole town's talking about how bright Main Street looks again," he said, clapping him on the back. "Feels good to have some light after all these years, huh?" Walter looked him straight in the eye. "Light shows everything, eventually." Raines chuckled, oblivious, and walked inside. Walter's gaze lingered on the mayor's spotless shoes, too polished for truth. Inside the maintenance shed, he started installing new control switches, rewiring sections under pretense of safety calibration. But what he was really doing was connecting every streetlight feed into a separate control line that led directly to his own device, a hidden relay he'd buried beneath his workshop floor years ago. When the time came, one signal could reroute the current, turning every bulb, every wire, every corner of the town into a canvas of light and exposure. It wasn't revenge he was building. It was revelation. As he soldered wires, he remembered the nights Nora would sit beside him, her voice soft, teasing him about his obsession with perfection. "You talk to wires more than people," she'd laugh. He'd always reply, "At least they listen." Now, the wires would finally speak for her. By afternoon, he visited the scrapyard to find extra parts. The owner, Vince, an old drinking buddy, leaned on the counter with suspicion. "Heard you're back fixing things, Walt. Town's finally paying for your talent, huh?" Walter nodded quietly. Vince lowered his voice. "Be careful. Word is, Raines doesn't like people poking around old work orders." Walter's eyes flicked up. "You mean the ones from '03? The ones that vanished after the audit?" Vince hesitated. "Yeah, some of us remember." Walter pocketed a few used relays and said, "Then keep remembering." That night, in his workshop, rain pattered against the tin roof as he tested each component. The lights flickered, humming faintly like an old heartbeat. On the wall, a corkboard held photos, his wife, the crash site, newspaper clippings, and now the still frame of Raines from the camera. He pinned them together with red string, the web of silence that bound them all. His soldering iron hissed as it sealed another connection. "Electricity never forgets," he muttered. A sudden knock broke the moment. He froze. The knock came again, 3 slow raps, deliberate. He turned off the light and moved toward the door quietly, his shadow stretching across the tools. "Who's there?" No answer. Just rain and silence. He opened the door slightly. No one outside, just an envelope taped to the handle. Inside was a single photo, Nora's car at the crash scene, taken from a high angle, clearly not police issued. On the back, 2 words scrawled in pencil. "We warned you." His breath caught. The paper trembled in his hand. Someone still had the original evidence, and they were watching him now. He looked toward the dark street, where his newly repaired lights flickered faintly in rhythm. He realized it wasn't just about uncovering truth anymore. It was about surviving long enough to show it. He went back inside, locking the door. Every sound outside now felt like a threat. The wind against the tin, the hum of distant transformers, even his own heartbeat. He sat at the table, spread out the photo, and stared at Nora's broken car under the darkened streetlight. His hand gripped the edge until the photo crumpled. "You warned me," he whispered. "But you forgot I built this town's light." His eyes drifted to control switch, its red indicator pulsing softly like a living thing. He flipped it once, and outside, the nearest streetlight flared brighter than ever, defiant, alive, watching. He stood there for a long moment, the glow reflecting in his tearful eyes. The wires hummed faintly around him, whispering through the walls. Then he smiled, slow and tired, whispering back, "Then let them watch." "Who wired these lights, Walter?" The mayor's voice was sharp, masked behind laughter and applause. Walter didn't answer. He stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, his old blue jacket faintly glowing under the floodlights he'd restored. Children ran with sparklers. Couples took photos beneath banners that read 100 Years of Hope. The mayor's face filled the stage screen, smiling, promising renewal, progress, and light. Walter's eyes didn't blink. Every word tasted like rot. The switch in his pocket felt heavy, a small metal truth waiting to speak louder than any speech could. The air was electric, the kind of silence before a storm that only a man who's lived through guilt can feel. He exhaled slowly, whispering, "You built this night on her grave." The first light flickered, just one bulb above the fountain. People laughed at the glitch. Then another blinked, then another, until the whole square shimmered in a strange rhythm, like a heartbeat out of sync. Mayor Raines paused mid-sentence, looking around, pretending it was all part of the show. Walter's face stayed unreadable, but his pulse raced. The wires beneath the streets hummed alive. He remembered every one he'd touched, every one he'd reconnected, every hidden circuit leading to this exact moment. For 20 years, they buried truth under concrete and celebration. Tonight, the lights would dig it back up. The stage lights dimmed suddenly, plunging the crowd into semi-darkness. Gasps rippled, a low hum built beneath their feet. The generators kicking, but not under anyone's control. Walter's control box pulsed red in his pocket. Small and warm. He pressed it once. Every streetlight blazed at once, flooding the square in white brilliance. The screens flickered, static cutting to the mayor's feed. Then an image appeared. A car, speeding through the intersection, the sound of screeching tires echoing through the speakers. The crowd froze. The footage played again, now clearer. The same metallic blue truck, the impact, the silence after. Rain's smile vanished. "Turn that off," he barked, gesturing to the tech crew. But the screens ignored him, cycling through old footage, police reports, deleted files, timestamps. Each frame a wound reopening. The faces of men who signed off the false report flashed across the walls. Young then, older now, but unmistakable. Walter's voice came through the speakers, low and steady, recorded early that morning. They said the light failed that night. But it didn't. They did. The murmurs turned to outrage. People shouted, pointing, realizing what they were seeing. Rain stumbled backward, sweat breaking across his temple. He turned toward the power van, yelling, "Cut it! Cut the damn power!" But every switch was locked. Walter had rerouted the grid. No one could stop it now. The footage zoomed in to show the moment after the crash. Headlights cutting through dust, the blue truck stopping, a man stepping out, looking around, then driving away. The freeze frame caught his face. Younger, but clear, Mayor Raines. The crowd gasped. Raines' wife covered her mouth. The deputy tried to move toward the control booth, but the lights followed him too, showing his name on the falsified witness report. Panic rippled. Raines turned toward Walter, his voice cracking between rage and fear. "You think this makes you a hero? You ruin lives over an accident." Walter stepped forward, the light catching the lines of his face, his eyes calm. "You already ruined mine," he said softly. "I'm just fixing the circuit." The crowd parted around him. No one stopped him. No one could. For years, he'd been invisible, the man who kept the town bright, while living in its shadows. Now every light reflected him. He climbed the stage slowly, each step steady, each movement deliberate. Raines backed away. "You don't understand what this town needed. We couldn't afford another scandal." Walter looked at him like a man examining a faulty wire. "You turned my wife's death into your campaign slogan." His voice trembled with exhaustion, not rage. "And you made me repair the light that killed her." Raines lunged toward him, desperate, but the deputy grabbed his arm. Cameras clicked, phones recorded. The world outside their small town, watching live as the truth burned. Walter turned toward the crowd, his hand resting on the final switch inside his pocket. His voice broke, but stayed steady enough for the microphones to catch. "You can't hide darkness under light forever. It always burns through." He flipped the switch. The town square erupted in a cascade of projection. Every building wall lit up with evidence, each street lamp blinking the time of the crash, the archive files, the hidden payoffs. The sky glowed faintly from the sheer force of exposure. The truth wasn't just seen, it was felt. People began to chant Nora's name. Raines fell to his knees, the weight of the light too much to bear. Walter turned away, walking down the steps as the crowd's roar filled the air behind him. The air smelled of rain and justice, raw, electric, final. He passed the same intersection where it had all begun, with a bulb above now shone brighter than ever. He stopped beneath it, the switch still warm in his hand. His reflection shimmered faintly on the wet asphalt. An old man, tired but not broken. The sound of police sirens echoed from the square, mixing with the crowd's cries. Walter looked up at the light and whispered, "She can rest now." A faint buzz answered him, soft as breath. He dropped the switch into a puddle and walked away, his silhouette fading as the town stayed illuminated behind him. But just before the scene ended, one last flicker pulsed through the wires. His system still alive, still recording, still ready. Because somewhere deep beneath the streets, his voice echoed through the circuits one last time. You thought you owned the dark, but it was mine all along. They'll come for you, Walt. Vince's voice trembled over crackling radio, the last words before static swallowed the signal. Walter didn't respond. He stood in the middle of Main Street, surrounded by silence that felt heavier than sound. The town square still glowed faintly in the distance, where the crowd had scattered moments ago, leaving behind echoing sirens, broken glass, and the flicker exposed truths burning on digital screens. His reflection shimmered in a puddle beneath the last streetlight he'd repaired, the one he'd left untouched by chaos. It stood steady calm like her, like Nora. The air reeked of rain and guilt. He adjusted his coat, every movement slow, deliberate, his breath visible under the soft electric hum. Somewhere behind him, the mayor's voice shouted orders, half command, half desperation. But Walter didn't turn around. For the first time in years, he didn't need to. The truth was louder than any man's denial. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small metal switch that had changed everything. It was no bigger than a lighter, scratched and stained from years of work. The same tool that once built a life with her hands now dismantled the world that took her away. He turned it over once, then closed his fist. "She can see now," he whispered, voice raw. Every light found her. A soft drizzle began to fall, misting the cracked asphalt, turning reflections into ripples. As he walked toward the edge of town, the sirens grew distant, replaced by a sound he hadn't heard in decades. People chanting her name. Nora Grady. It rose and fell like prayer, not for him, not for vengeance, but for the truth itself. His boots left muddy imprints behind him, fading as the rain deepened. He thought about what Raines must be doing now. Probably sitting in some interrogation room, drenched in sweat, spinning stories that no longer mattered. Walter left him every file, every timestamp, every confession burned into the light grid. He'd even left a note on the mayor's desk. "You fixed your name on the city. I fixed her truth on the light." The irony wasn't lost on him. They had called him crazy once, an old man chasing ghosts through circuits. Maybe he was. But ghosts were just memories that refused to turn off. He reached the bridge that overlooked the small river, the same one he and Nora used to cross on summer nights. The same one where she'd stopped once, turned toward him, and said, "You build things so the world doesn't forget people." Back then, he'd laughed it off. Now he understood. He stopped in the middle of the bridge and looked out over the water. The reflections of the streetlights shimmered below, moving with the current. Flickers of light over blackness, like souls refusing to drown. From behind, a police car approached slowly, headlights off, tires crunching on wet gravel. He didn't move. A voice called out, cautious but gentle, "Walter Grady. Step away from the edge." He recognized the tone. Deputy Cole, the same man who had threatened him days ago. But now, there was no power in his voice, only fear. Walter turned slightly, his face half lit by the glow of the nearest lamp. "You were there that night, weren't you?" Cole swallowed. Rain streaked down his hat brim. "Orders, Walt. We were told it was a hit and run, told to let it go." Walter studied him quietly, then nodded once. "Then you remember how dark it was?" Cole hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, couldn't see a thing." Walter's eyes glimmered. "Now you can." He looked down at the switch again, thumb resting on the worn metal button. Cole stepped closer, voice shaking. "You've done enough. The whole country's talking about this. You're on every screen, every feed. They know the truth. Let it end here." Walter smiled faintly. "It already has." The deputy took another step forward, hand extended. "Come on, let's get you warm. You're shivering." Walter's hand lowered, but not to surrender. He opened his fist, revealing the switch one last time. "You ever wonder what truth costs, son?" Cole didn't answer. The rain answered for him, steady and cold. Walter pressed the button gently. The town behind him erupted in light again, not harsh this time, but soft, golden like dawn. Every street, every corner glowed with quiet brilliance. The faces of the fallen heroes carved into plaques now shimmered with names corrected, truth restored. The old intersection where Nora died shone brightest, a wreath of light forming around it as if the earth itself remembered. Cole turned back, awed, whispering, "What did you do?" Walter's voice cracked but stayed strong. Gave her the sunrise she never got. He let the switch fall from his hand. It clattered onto the wet steel of the bridge, sparking once before dying out. Walter stepped back, leaning against a railing, watching the light ripple across the town like forgiveness. Cole called his name again, stepping closer, but Walter didn't move. His breathing slowed, calm now, unburdened. "She used to say the world needed fixing," he murmured, eyes half closed. "Guess I finally did." Cole reached him just as Walter's knees weakened. He caught him by the shoulders, but the old man only smiled faintly. "Tell them light remembers." His voice faded into the sound of rain. The glow across the town began to dim, returning to ordinary brightness. But something lingered, a hum in the air, like a current that refused to die. The deputy stood there for a long moment, holding the weight of the man who'd carried the town's sins alone. In the distance, the clock tower struck midnight, each chime echoing over the hills. The lights flickered once more, not in malfunction, but as if saying goodbye. And then silence. Later that night, when the news broke, the footage of the town glowed across screens worldwide, an old electrician's last act of truth. They called it the night the lights remembered. But to those who knew him, it was something simpler. It was love, still burning, long after the hands that built it had gone still. In the center of town, under the brightest lamp, a small plaque appeared weeks later. Walter and Nora Grady. They turned darkness into light. And beneath it, etched in faint brass, one final line. He couldn't turn back time, but he made the world remember it owed him. Fire, make sure to like this channel, subscribe, and enjoy the videos.